there, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, hurtle into horror, and plunge into peril. If you've ever let someone vomit an unknown liquid into your mouth, you're in the right place. I'm Justin, and I wish that I could see the magical year of 1999.
I'm Nico, the Prince of Dankness.
Well, Nico stole my thunder. Because I was going to say that I'm the Prince of Danness, but now
It's
That's what I
okay,
do.
Dan.
I ruin things.
yeah.
It's okay, Dan, because we're here today to review Prince of Darkness. This was directed by the horror master himself, John Carpenter.
That's horror, not whore.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Starring Dennis Dunn as Walter, Jameson Parker as Brian, Lisa Blunt as Catherine, Susan Blanchard as Kelly, Ann Yen as Lisa, Victor Wong as Professor Byrak, and Donald Pleasance as a priest. So we open with the priest dying. Nope, not Donald Pleasance, but it's still kind of a downer. But then we open for real with Dr. Byrak, a philosopher, physicist, hybrid professor. He is contacted by a priest, this one played by Donald Pleasance, representing the Brotherhood of Sleep. And no, Nico's not part of it, though maybe he should be. And he's asked to assist with an investigation regarding an ancient green liquid that's been locked up in a cylinder and an accompanying tome. Dr. Byrak gathers a large group of unpaid grad students, which includes Walter, Brian, Catherine, Kelly, and Lisa. The group have to give up their weekend, but in return, they get to take part in a grand experiment. Isn't that right, Dan?
That's right. So the experiments begin, and the group is flummoxed at the properties of the green liquid. The priest tells Dr. Byrak that not even the Vatican is aware of this, and this secret has been passed down through generations. Lisa makes some headway on the translation work, and as it turns out, the green liquid is actually the son of something known as the anti-god. The long and short of it is that the anti-god lives in a mirror dimension, but he sent his son to ours. God beat the brakes off of him and sealed him in that liquid in the cylinder. Sometime after, Jesus, who in this movie happens to be a human-like alien, came through to warn everyone about it. But the church decided to not tell anyone until humanity had advanced far enough to decipher the equations that he had with him. So that was the long and short of it, if you believe that. Simple, really.
Those equations were absolute nonsense, and we're going to talk about that.
Mr. Betzler's class.
Oh, no.
Oh, shit.
Well, speaking of, Nico, why don't you give us some more insight to the liquid, though?
So, unfortunately, some of the liquid has gotten out of the container, and it possesses one of the students who begins then killing and possessing others. In addition, a group of street people, basically homeless, unhoused folks, surround the church where all this is happening, and they kill anyone that tries to leave. I'm going to talk about that scene later, too. The research group is understandably concerned by all this, and they're about to hold a vote when shit really hits the fan. The possession now starts to spread further, and more people fall under the sway of the green liquid. Walter then gets trapped in a closet and sees the possessed people bring the goo to Kelly and watches as it goes inside of her.
Yeah, I have no joke. I'm an adult here. So Kelly begins to change and becomes the vessel for the anti-god son. She triggers an attack, and all of the possessed people start to attack the non-possessed people. Additionally, she begins to reach out to her father, the anti-god, by attempting to pull him through a mirror. Catherine shows up and bravely tackles the possessed Kelly through a mirror, which the priest then breaks. This traps the possessed Kelly, the anti-god, and Catherine in the mirror dimension. And now, the dangers of the world has passed. Right, Dan?
Or has it? This whole movie, everyone has been having dreams that Brian theorizes aren't actually dreams, but a transmission from the future. Now, Brian is able to see the dream in full. The dream explains that it is a video that comes from the year 1999. In it, we see Catherine emerging from the church, clearly possessed. Brian awakes, and the movie ends with him reaching out to his mirror. The end. As a side note, I really wish I had that kind of power or technology in 1999 to transmit video across time. That would be sick.
Yeah, but then Y2K just fucked it all up. So.
You know, I kept thinking about Y2K in this movie, actually.
Oh yeah.
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 Damn.
Well, we got a lot to dive into here, so let's begin. First off, Dan, how's this movie look?
I actually kind of like how this movie looks. There's not, well, near the end we get some crazy cool effects and stuff, but most of it there's not too many effects. The green liquid I think looks kind of cool in the cylinder container thing, and then near the end when Kelly is sort of possessed and everything, like her skin sloughing off and burn look and everything look kind of cool.
Yes.
So I'm a fan of how it looks.
Indeed. I would have to agree. I think that this film is more low-key than, say, Mouth of Madness, which had a lot more going on visually. But at the same time, I think it fit its purpose well, and I think the things that needed to look kind of crazy did look kind of crazy. Nico, how's this look?
So while I am a fan of when everything just starts to go haywire towards the end, and I do really like, for example, what Dan said with the sort of skin sloughing off and people really becoming more like monstrous, I am not the biggest fan of the way this looks. I found the frequent shots that just like return the camera to a view of the street outside for no real reason just happened way too often. I didn't think that the liquid looked threatening or even like remotely scary. I just thought it looked silly. And I just I wish that there was more flair earlier, because I just was having a real hard time taking this seriously until the end.
Mm-hmm. Although it is worth noting, I think those shots of the street were to show the growing number of the street people, as they call them.
There's a bunch of them where they were just empty, man. And it's like, you could imagine any sort of street corner for like an abandoned part of town. And like, that's it. Like, why are we including this so much?
I feel like I disagree, but we'll move on. Dan, sounds. How does this sound?
I like the sound. I thought the soundtrack was killer. John Carpenter did the music, or at least partially, and I think he does a killer job. I think it did a great job of setting sort of the stage of apocalyptic. It doesn't really sound religious, but so this isn't going to be the best statement, but I thought that it set the stage for a great pseudo-religious horror movie. Like when I say it doesn't sound religious, there's no like big choirs or organs and things that we like traditionally relate to Christian music. But I think that it did a very good job of sounding apocalyptic and sort of questioning of faith and menacing and everything.
Indeed, for sure. I really, really like this soundtrack a lot. I feel like, in my opinion, the soundtrack almost kind of makes the movie, and obviously sound is huge in every movie, but I feel like in this one in particular, as you said, Dan, it really, really sets the stage. The soundtrack is Carpenter to a T. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I just really, really loved it. And I got to hit up John Carpenter to get his bass sound he got on his synth. But outside of that, I liked it. Nico, how about you?
So I want to couch what I'm about to say and also what I just said by mentioning that John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors, and I love the heart and soul that he brings to every one of his films. But in terms of sound, I don't know where else I would put this, but just like, y'all, the script is not good. And I don't find the performances between the actors, with few exceptions, to be either believable or just some of them are just outlandishly out of pocket sometimes. More often than not, I was taken out of what was going on, not by the stakes of everything, because this is apocalyptic, but I was more often than not taken out by just the performances, really.
I personally didn't mind a lot of the script and the performances, with one notable exception. Walter, I think was his name. He had the most like out of pocket lines and jokes and stuff. The guy who gets trapped in the closet at the end.
Yeah.
I agree with you for his character. The rest I thought was fine personally.
I guess speaking on that, I liked the script and I also liked Walter. Like, I feel like there would be some dude who uses, that kind of stuff to cope with bad things happening. I see myself often do that. So I don't know. I can kind of see it. Plus, I died laughing when he told the one Asian chick, he's like, "I'm sorry, you don't look Asian at all." And if you didn't at least chuckle at that, you have no soul. I'm gonna put that one down right now.
That one was like cards on the table. Walter's actually my favorite part of this movie because of how ridiculous he is, but and this is a big comma, but like there are so many other moments where it's just either lackluster or just plain off. Like there's a point where one of the characters we didn't mention, Calder, he goes outside to I can't remember if it's to confront the zombified people or to maybe escape, but he just sort of stands there while this one woman shows up after how can I say this the right way? Like, it is such a just wet fart of a scene when you compare it to the stakes of what's going on, considering his performance. Because, like, the line that he says that took me out of it was like, "Oh, this you actually believe this? This is all bullshit. It's caca." And then he like looks dejectedly down at himself and goes in a sadder voice, "It's caca." Like. Come on, man.
Fair enough. I guess I didn't have as much of a problem with it, but that's okay, Nico, because we're about to get deep here. We're going to talk about God,
Oh,
alien
great.
Jesus, anti-God, and anti-God's son. So
Why is Satan in a tube?
I guess it's technically maybe Satan, maybe Satan's son, depending on how you want to interpret it. But either way, if you recall the synopsis, God beat the brakes out of him and put him in a tube.
Yep, he sure did.
Yep.
That's facts. I got nothing to add there, man.
So, Dan, how do you feel about the film's perhaps sci-fi alien-y take on what is largely a Christian mythos?
At its core, I don't mind it. I thought the whole like anti-God sort of mirror of God, whatever, was kind of cool. I just think they went a little too far. Like, I feel like you could have just said there's an anti-God, it or some piece of it is trapped in this tube, and like that's it. But they kept like going with it, and oh, by the way, Jesus was an alien and who knew mathematics very well. And it's like,
Bro, those equations
why?
were straight key smashes. None of it had any actual fucking meaning whatsoever.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I would bet you money that it does.
Okay. All right. How much you want to bet, Justin?
All right, put a 20 spot on it.
I'll put 200 on it.
I said a 20 spot. You must have misheard me.
This is how
'Cause-
convinced I am that not only it's gibberish, but you, my friend, are gibberish.
Because those were differential equations.
They said, okay, man, those were differential equations in the same way that I look at a bicycle and say, that's a bowl of spaghetti. Like, no, they weren't, man. I promise you.
Oh, they were. And speaking of bikes, Nico, I'm glad you brought that up because Alice Cooper's in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is he in the movie?
Why not?
Like, is he just real tight with John Carpenter? Because, I mean, that's cool. I don't have any complaints. I'm just like, oh, hey, and we got this apocalyptic movie, and also, unhoused Alice Cooper just fucking stabs a guy. So there you go.
With a bike.
With a bike, yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, as far as my take on the anti-God, God thing, once again, I liked it. I thought that there was a real critical scene where Professor Byrak is talking to the priest and he goes, yeah, what if, and he theorizes everything about the mythology. And I personally think that it adds a certain element that I think we'll go into a little bit later. But for the record, I mostly liked it. I will concede, though, that I don't know if Jesus needed to be directly referenced as an alien, because we had like our universe and the mirror universe and everything was great. And like, by the way, Jesus was an alien. And I was like, shit.
I
Fucking-
wonder if the Ancient Aliens guy has seen this movie and if he was just like frothing at the mouth the entire time.
Well, I just started thinking about the year 2000 and Nibiru and all that shit. That's what that got
reminds
me
me and potentially the audience of Nibiru.
Isn't that like
What
an
is this?
alien planet that was going to do some wild shit? Like
Well, what
I
does
myself
wild
am
shit
rusty.
mean?
I don't even know. I'm rusty on the mythos. So someone, dear listener, you look it up and then
You look up what I said on this podcast and you educate me about what I said.
Well, no, all he has to do is look it up, or he or she or they or whoever has to look it up and then transmit it
Yeah.
back to me. And I should be able to contribute to the podcast better in the future past.
But
Nico-
you didn't, so therefore it doesn't happen.
Well, now that I've
We
done
got
it again,
equal
maybe they will.
opportunity outsourcing our jobs to you.
Nico, how'd you feel about Anti-God?
It was fine. The whole concept of it is something that appears a lot in like fantasy and video games, so it wasn't as big of a leap for me. The thing that caused a disconnect for me was in how it like propagates and spreads, and I blame the cinematography for most of this. And maybe some of this was taken out on the editing room floor, I don't know, but just I found it completely unbelievable that this hermetically sealed or whatever the fuck tank full of green lava liquid that has tons of glitter can just suddenly shoot out inexplicably into people's perfectly positioned mouths.
Well,
Like-
did you not see there was a big puddle of it at the top? Like it had gotten out.
Yeah, even still, man, like I feel like you've got the shot where there is the puddle on the ceiling. You've got the little like soda jet stream, and then people are possessed. And I wish they would have added maybe like one or two more shots of an actual transition, because the way it is right now, it looks almost amateurish to me.
I mean, okay, I gotta call big disagree on that. The only time, like the first one, was when there was a big puddle, the woman looks up, and it shoots directly at her, covers her face and mouth in a most non-sexual way, and
Most non-sexual, yes.
that's how that happens. And every time after that, we literally see like people holding down the people or whatever, and then she opens up her mouth and shoots the liquid into their mouth, which is not a stretch by any means.
I just can't even find those parts believable. Just like literally turn away.
Well, you can't find it believable that someone could hold you down and like force like liquid down your throat?
No. You could turn the other way.
I mean,
And one, like, I would fight back. So, like, getting into the what would you do? I don't know what your whole, like, fucking plan for this episode is or whatever. But, like, I just find it so difficult to find any of this threatening or plausible in practice in how it's
I
shown.
mean, I don't know. I feel like if someone holds you down, you're not expecting someone to super soaker you in your mouth, are you? Is that like a fear you've got?
I don't know what kind of Friday nights you're having, but
I mean, fair enough. Dan, any thoughts on the mouth projectile?
Oh, I agree with you, Justin. I'm
All
with
right.
it.
So, Dan, speaking of things you're with, are there any themes that you're with here in this movie?
I think one theme is a loss of faith.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. From, of course, the priest perspective and the religious perspective. But I think it also extends to, I guess faith may be a loose term, but understanding of the universe and just how things work in general.
Mhm.
Because a lot of what the Satan, son of Satan, anti-God son thing sort of defies what we know as reality. So I think that's a big thing is we have, I guess this is a later talking point, but I'll say now anyways, but we have these academics and quote unquote like intelligent people who are there studying this, and it kind of breaks all of the rules of what they know.
Right. Exactly. And we can kind of hit on it right now. Why do we think, and this is for the room, that they did use grad students, academics, and scientists? Why weren't there more priests involved?
Because the opening scene was at a school.
But why?
But the rest of the movie's in a church.
Well, I think that's part of like John Carpenter's vibe. He likes to give a lot of light to people who are, one, I think academics, period, but two, like one of the things that I like about him is he doesn't have a lot of very many, that was redundant. He doesn't have very many like traditional sort of almost campy action heroes, and getting like I said a lot compared to all of his characters. Like I'm speaking in terms of not like films, but like the amount of characters that he has. Does that make sense?
A bit, but he definitely has a ton of campy action heroes.
I think John Carpenter just likes academics.
I think it probably has to do with the fact that, and this is kind of a trope to take it back to the themes of like, oftentimes it's the people who have the kind of most steadfast grip on this world and this reality, kind of pinging off what Dan said earlier, that then have to almost face something that totally breaks their view of reality and of the world. And then they kind of got to take that to the next level, because at first they're excited and then it's a ton of skepticism afterwards because they're like, oh shit, this can't be possible. And then you get the fear.
Improbable.
Yeah, and the breaking down of things. So personally, I think that's why it's grad students. Dan, you got a different perspective on that?
Oh, I kind of agree, but I also think it's interesting that even though I said this a minute ago, yes, I think it's a loss of faith thematically for the priest, but the priest was also the most willing and open to understanding what was going on, because he knew this was happening, and sort of for him it's sort of like a slow loss of faith, I think, and he was more primed to accept it, which I think is sort of a reversal of how it often is, where the academics are the ones who are challenging the faith, but now it's almost like faith is challenging the academics. Like they're the ones who are kind of like, no, this can't be, like this defies science. And the religious guy is kind of like, yeah, but I'm telling you how it is. This is what's happening.
Yeah. And I remember a scene in particular where he sounds super betrayed. He's like, but why weren't we told he was our prisoner?
Yeah.
So
it's almost like not so much a loss of faith in the religion itself for him, but more of loss of faith in the institution of religion.
Right. No, that makes total sense. Nico, any other themes you picked up on?
So the one that sort of stood out to me was the just nature of sleep and dreams. You know, the major like entity in the movie is the Brotherhood of Sleep, and the sort of one of the driving forces in the narrative is the power of dreams. So I think it has something to say about maybe the validity of what we see in dreams, and maybe we should take some more time to, one, just get better sleep. Honestly, weird takeaway from the movie, but I mean, hey, it is important, right? And maybe not just brushing things off if you see something that's profound in the dream, because like, don't get me wrong, if you have some just absolute wild boy dreams, and I know that we all do, like sometimes a cigar is just a cigar after all, but if you get some real like stuff that touches you at your core, like maybe investigate that.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Now, would we call this movie Lovecraftian, do you think? Or no?
Yes, I would.
Why? Because I'm on the fence.
I think because it deals with a being, a entity that is larger than life itself. And yes, it is rooted in Christian Catholic religion, but it sort of defies a lot of those not preconceived, but what we know of the religion, and it's larger than that, and it's sort of like apocalyptic. People kind of lose themselves a little bit, not as strongly as in other films like In the Mouth of Madness or anything, but they do. I mean, what's his name kind of like kills himself and kind of laughs about it a
Comes
lot
back.
and comes back. And so I think a lot of the themes are right up that alley.
I would agree. And like Dan said, I think it really is for me. It starts off and you would expect a more Christian mythos, but then it expands further. And, there's ancient and old gods that dwell in a dark dimension beyond our comprehension, attempting to break through into ours. That itself is a major, major Lovecraftian hinge.
Yeah.
And also, TBH, this was like a couple tentacles away from, I think, being strongly, strongly rooted in Lovecraftian shit, but I would still call it Lovecraftian.
Sleep and dreams too.
Yeah, the dreamer awakens.
True.
Yeah.
So how's that fence, Nico? Are you on the Lovecraftian side or are
It's-
you on the non?
See, the thing is for me, like, it just doesn't feel as truly unknowable to me. Like, we get a pretty good enough explanation of what's going on in terms of like the hierarchy of these gods and what's going on and how they impact us, but like, Cthulhu, truly unknowable. The King in Yellow, truly unknowable. The monsters in Bird Box, truly unknowable, except for the little test dummies that looks like tiny little Play-Doh men or whatever the fuck it was. Like, it reads more as a dark fantasy horror to me than strictly speaking cosmic horror, but I do see where you're both coming from.
I don't know. I kind of feel like cosmic horror, out of all the genres of horror, is very close to dark fantasy horror.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it really is. It's just, to me, the aspect of it being just, it didn't feel alien enough to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. Two sides of a coin, and the streets will decide. Now, the last kind of major talking point I want to bring up here. So the quote unquote street people, as the movie refers to them, why are they affected?
I have no goddamn idea, so I hope one of you two do.
I don't either.
And there is more and more of them as the movie goes on. And to me, this is also kind of like a little bit more on the Lovecraftian side of things, but I believe that it's the people who are the most vulnerable who are often impacted first. Because they mention, it is true that there's a lot of people who live on the streets that also suffer from a lot of psychological issues. And I think the green goo, anti-God son, whatever you want to call it, is able to mount an assault on those people first. Because we also see from the character that Dan talked about, the guy who kind of slit his own throat because he did not want to fall or be prey to it. And then it still brings him back. But even then, sometimes there's moments where he seemingly is like fighting against it. I would refer to him as a person strongly rooted in faith. And he has that
Certainly.
fortitude. And I think kind of those people are almost the opposite in terms of they don't have the same kind of, mental fortitude and mental strength. They're more vulnerable, and he preys on the vulnerable.
Do you think so this is me jumping ahead in time from the movie a little bit, but like one of the things with these demon monstrosity whatevers is they get fascinated or awestruck by mirrors. So like, do you think we could pretty handily defeat them with our smartphones and just cameras? Because I feel like we could. Just like put that shit in reverse mode.
I'm not even really sure what that would do, but I think the mirror more so acts as almost like a barrier to cross between when they can. So, I mean,
Symbologically
sure,
speaking, yes, absolutely. But like, I just mean that they literally kind of like wig out a little bit and freak out, and like it's a ability that you could do, or not ability, it is a tool that you could use to stun them, I guess is my point.
I guess maybe depending on the lore or how you want to write it. But I think a lot of times these films often use like a mirror is a mirror. I think even, yes, if on like a technical level, phone camera, maybe, but I think they'd probably leave it to mirrors. But Dan, you were about to say something.
I don't think a smartphone or camera would work because I think it's not the mirror itself that does it. It's what they're seeing in the mirror because the anti-God resides in the mirror dimension or whatever. So I think just taking a picture or showing them themselves wouldn't really do much unless the anti-god is there.
Potentially.
Mm-hmm. So I want to take it now to the what would you do? And this is one of those where it's always difficult when there's something apocalyptic like this, because there's very precious little that a human could in fact do. But I will ask anyways. Do you think, is there any one critical moment in this movie that if you could kind of jump in and help them out with something or do something to kind of avoid something from happening, is there any one critical moment that you think you could do and possibly avert the ending that happens in 1999?
I don't know if it would avert things entirely, but 1,000,000% they could have gotten Walter extricated from that closet with a fucking quickness. Like, when they first establish that he's in the other room, they like shout through the wall saying like, oh, it could take 2 or 3 couple hours to get to you. And then when they actually get down to it, it's done in a matter of minutes. Like, the walls are shown to be flimsy. So I just would have taken care of business.
I don't think that's the case because he's in there for like a whole day.
Is it really a whole day though?
From what I understood, when the rest of the group locks themselves in a room and they like barricade the door, they're like, it's like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning and the sun is coming up. But then later on, one of the characters is like, oh, the sun's about to go down. We'll attack after nighttime or whatever.
Sure.
So they kind of imply that they're there for like an entire day and they've been like poking away and trying to destroy that wall, the brick wall, for the entirety of the day.
But there's no like evidence of that until the end when they actually go and start hacking away at it.
What do you mean there's no evidence of
like
that?
There's no marks on the wall whenever we're back in the room showing that they...
There's a big ass hole. I mean, there's like a big ass hole in the wall, taking pieces and like breaking out bricks.
Turns.
Yeah, I mean, since getting that initial like entryway, they don't like... I didn't see like I found that to be one of the other things that was just kind of unbelievable towards how the end it just is solved so very quickly.
I don't know. I didn't get that because it's not solved very quickly. They talk about the passage of time and how it's not just like a couple minutes. Oh, we bust through this wall. Like they were working at it
but
all
they
day.
don't have a scene like specifically dedicated to it until the end.
No, but they do. There's the initial one, and then they work on it throughout because we see like the one chick, she's got the thing and she's trying to break it down, and then Brian tries to break it down after her, and then Brian tries to leave, and then they pull his ass back in. And they say it was a stupid ass idea, and then they like it's implied that they keep trying because when Walter's like, "Yo, it's happening, let me out now,"
and then he with
like,
a quickness dismantles the wall on his side.
I think it's implied though that they've been working on this. They didn't just like leave it alone and then, oh shit, we forgot about our boy
The
Walter.
only reason why he could bust it down
down
is because they spent all day
Tatiana.
busting it down from the other side.
Tatiana.
Yes.
Yeah, they did. But nevertheless, Nico, you would extricate Walter first.
Yes.
Dan, how about you?
I would have, as soon as I saw that the liquid in the container was leaking upwards, I would have ran my ass back upstairs and been like, hey, yo, this is leaking upwards.
Yeah.
We got a problem here.
Yeah. And I'm on the same lines a little bit, but I would have just used the buddy system, particularly when you have this like vial of goo that you know there's like some evil shit going down. I wouldn't just have people down there by themselves.
Facts.
Especially like my guy who, I don't know, he's like 25, but he's out here looking like Bob Backlund. I'm like, bro, just shave it. And I think that,
man,
I don't know, he was there by himself for a minute. He fucking dies and his body is just there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And no one gives a shit.
Not like, quite Black Christmas levels, but almost.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know about that. But I say we take it now to the critic review. Where do you guys think this movie sits?
I say this.
think it.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I feel like it has like a 82.
Mm-hmm.
I say this a lot. I feel like this could have any point on the scale from 0 to 100 because just the genre is so widely varied. But I'm gonna guess 74.
So Nico does in fact win. This movie is sitting squarely at a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience being right in tow at a 61. But I want to ask you, where does this movie sit for you?
I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of good stuff there, and I found myself enjoying the story and enjoying the religious anti-God alien Jesus stuff a little bit and the sort of apocalyptic nature of the movie. I think it does have some flaws in it, so it's definitely not perfect, but I had a good time. I'm going to give it a 78.
I want to once again frame what I'm about to say by reminding everybody that Jonathan Howard Carpenter? Hold on. Yup, John Howard Carpenter is one of my favorite directors / people in the genre, just period. He's an absolute legend of the game, and I owe a lot of what I enjoy about media to him. I think this is the worst John Carpenter movie I've seen. I think there is a lot of really good stuff waiting to peek out here that is held back by either clumsy design or less than ideal performances from some of the cast, but I do still love the core soul that comes through, I think, every Carpenter film. There's so much charm and heart that does come through even still, and because of that, I'm not going to give this too low of a rating, but I'm going to give this a 60.
Much like there is a god and an anti-god, there is Nico and then there is me. And while we are not gods, we do live in mirror dimensions. Because
It's true.
I personally love this movie. Now, I do agree that this is not John Carpenter's strongest outing. I don't think anyone would say that. Maybe someone would. But first and foremost, I love seeing Dennis Dunn and Victor Wong back in the next John Carpenter joint. Big Trouble.
100%.
Yeah, Big Trouble in Little China had just come out the year before. So it's awesome to see them in a totally different thing. That's also putting them both in very non-stereotypical roles for Asian actors. Like, I think that's hugely important. And that's like the little forward here. But also, this movie for me, I enjoyed its theological babble, for better or worse. I thought the characters were fine. I wondered why there were so many researchers, but then, hey, they're there to die. So that's something I always talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what they're there for. They're literally there to die. You are a flesh puppet. And for what it's worth, I do in fact also think that this movie makes me feel a lot like cosmic horror makes me feel. I think my favorite, and this is going to sound weird, one of my favorite things of horror is when it makes me feel small and insignificant. Like, humanity is nothing. We are truly a speck in the cosmos. And there is something out there so much more important than us that could crush us at any moment in time. That's what drew me to cosmic horror. And that's kind of what draws me to this movie as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I definitely think there are improvements that could be made to this film, but I like it. So for me, it's going to get an 86. Do we recommend this movie?
I would.
I would.
Yeah, it would.
All right, then. Well, that at least saves me the embarrassment at the John Carpenter fan club meetup. But I can kind of tell already, this is not going to get the Golden Seal, is it, Nico?
No.
For the record, I also would not have given the Golden Seal, so don't feel bad. So there you have it. A recommendation from the pod, though not the Golden Seal that some of us may have been hoping for in the future past. But now, dear listener, we would love to hear from you. If you like this movie, if you hate this movie, if you've never heard of this movie, or if you need a pizza delivered to your house. Well, actually, no, scratch that last one. There's other people for that. But you can hit us on social media. We're on X and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. Plus, you can catch everything we've done on our website, which is, of course, dotdhorror.com. Also, if you like what you've heard or don't like what you've heard, still give us a good review, though, and help us spread around. Like, that's very important. If you're a hater, make sure everyone else also listens to what you hate so that you can all hate on us together.
Spread the hate.
Indeed.
Schadenfreude is a real thing.
But till next time, look out for one another. Respect your personal time. Like if a class just randomly asks you to give up your weekend for some unpaid work that you have no idea what it's about.
Yeah, here's a real what would you do? And this is a real ass question, y'all. Would you work on the weekends? Would you go into work on the weekends?
I would, but not for like, hey, yo, we're not going to tell you shit about shit. And you're also going to sleep there and eat there and not tell you shit about shit.
Same.
See, I wouldn't. I can't do it, man. Like, that's a hard fucking boundary for me.
Fair enough. Take care of one another. But as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.